Okay, I don't know where he gets the energy because I don't have it. I don't have that energy that he has. That was a remarkable. That guy is I've never seen a ball of energy like that in my life. People say I have a lot of energy. I remember I blew Matt Taibbi's brain when I went and did his show the first time because I talk like that. He said I was able to stay angry for an hour straight. But anyway, that was crazy. That was a crazy energy. But that was what? Wow. So I don't know what's going on with the UFO, other dimension. I know there's certainly other dimensions of consciousness. I know that the one we're living in, I know like from my own experience, when I take a small dose of mushrooms and I close my eyes, that whatever that is seems more real than when I open my eyes. And so I know, and I've heard all the people talk about DMT and ayahuasca, and Ram Dass talked about that there was at least 5 levels of consciousness and that you could travel through them, and that his guru could travel through dimensions of consciousness effortlessly.
Even Sam Harris acknowledges it.
Does he?
Yeah. He trips and stuff, and he does atheist meditation.
Well, that's so weird that he calls himself an atheist then. It's just like, that's a peculiar. I mean, I'm anti-religion dogma, and that's different.
Well, atheist is supposed to mean you just don't have a God you worship at all. You know, like that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be.
Well, there is a transpersonal center in my unconscious,
of course,
that I know is controlling things more. The part of my life and personality and everything that I'm aware of is small in comparison to the unconscious part or the other dimension. That is actually, like, the way I try to describe it to people is that we're all just a part of consciousness, whatever it is. And there's no separation. And that consciousness, let's say it's an ocean. Well, the part that we see is a wave. The part of the consciousness ocean that we see is just a wave. And I can surf that wave. I can't control the wave. I can't control the ocean. All I can do is try my best to surf that wave of consciousness. That I'm not in control of, that is in control of me. And so that's what they talk about, you have to surrender to God. Well, you surrender to whatever that is.
You get a little bit, it's like a video game, like
Grand Theft Auto. You get a little bit.
Grand Theft Auto, you could do whatever you want, but there's one overarching story that you're going to do that you can kind of do how you want. And I always wonder about that when people say it, because I was telling you before, the original, they called the Old Testament, they didn't believe in a soul. That came from the Greeks later. But I always wonder, you play some computer game where you create a character. Am I his soul? Like, I'm not the thing I made that I'm playing as. You know what I mean? Am I in another dimension or whatever? And then if I make another character, did I reincarnate? I think it's probably, if anything, more akin to that. Like that people think you have a silver cord. It sounds like a controller cord on an old Nintendo to me.
I mean, these are all different metaphors for what is kind of unexplainable.
But I did DMT a bunch, and I don't think I was talking to any real. It sounded like I was in my head, and it's just there's a lot of, the collective unconscious. 100%. That's what it felt like. The thing that sticks with me is.
So his idea that there are other beings surrounding us.
Sure. Yes.
But we just can't see it, because if we did, it would overwhelm us.
Of course, you don't need that just for evolution. Yeah. I don't get Jason Berman was saying to me yesterday, he goes, I don't know if I believe in macroevolution. Macroevolution is not a thing. That's some marketing word, okay? All evolution is micro over a long time. A species can't turn another species. We're all made of an octopus and an octopus looks like an alien made out of the same shit you are.
Yes.
You're not that different from a fucking octopus. Of course you could evolve. What does it have to do with if there's God? It has nothing to do with if there's God.
And what sent me down this whole road of investigation, let's put it this way, into my unconscious and how was when I realized that time doesn't exist, right? So it exists in this level of consciousness, but like when I figured out that if you travel fast enough, time stops.
It goes backwards. You go
and
faster.
That time and space are the same thing. You're like, whoa. So that's what got me going on all of this. Was like, oh, what I'm perceiving isn't necessarily what I think it is.
Of course.
And
these are all just words we made up for things.
Yes.
Like dimension's not even a right word, I'm sure. The thing he was talking about, he didn't know all the terms for it, but he was talking about non-locality, where the atoms aren't there.
Right, non-locality.
And I want to ask him that because I got the impression from when I did DMT, and Rogan talks about it on his word, that they're like, look at this, look at this. there's something that it wants you to look at it and measure it, because I don't think it's there unless you're looking. And people, for some reason, have a craving. They don't want to crave like a god watching them. They want the government to watch them all day, or they want to be famous so the public can watch them all day, because they feel like they don't exist unless you're giving them attention. And there's some kind of, and when he said thing about AI, what do you think? Like AI is a trick, right? It's like you're imbuing it, that it's alive, but it's just some algorithms. I have a suspicion if there's a God, that's what it is. How do you know you're real and it's not just God's consciousness imbued on you, because he's looking at, when God stops looking at you, then you don't exist here no more.
Well, I mean, Bill Hicks, I remember him saying that we live in God's thoughts.
Like the author of a book.
We're the imagination of ourselves.
It's not a watchmaker, it's an author.
And so I definitely know.
Didn't really answer the alien question, but it's very interesting stuff he was talking about.
Right. And I don't, your point about why couldn't there be these other dimensional things, and also aliens coming from other planets
in a huge universe.
Why couldn't that also be true? Why couldn't both those things be true?
When he did the paper thing that we've all seen in an MCU movie, of course, that's what I'm saying. The people that say I don't think it could be from other planets, what I want to know is,
because we couldn't, in this dimension that we're in, you can't travel fast enough to get there. But if you're in another dimension, you can get there.
Yeah, Hindus say have a thing about all the planets. Everybody's on their own. I'm mangling it, but it was interesting when I heard it. It's like all the planets have people on them, but in your dimension they don't. Like everybody's on a different radio frequency. Anyway, there's all kinds of ideas about how it could work. I just am curious. Some people go, I don't believe that they could be from other planets. And I didn't get that impression from Alex, but I know people say it because they're Bible people. And they're like, it must be a trick from Dean. Like my mother would probably say that. The Catholic Church doesn't say that. They probably know a little more about it. But I'm sure there's, extra dimensionals. But why are there not also? Because I still remember this from 2011. It was like a joke. This article came out in Iran in a Farsi newspaper that Obama is in league with extraterrestrials called the Tall Whites. And I was like, and my friend who makes a Wi-Fi was like, that sounds like a losing basketball team. A great line. And at the time, all you ever heard about is these gray aliens. That's the only thing I'd ever heard of. I was like, what the hell is a Tall Whites? And years later, I see a guy talking about it online. This guy, Charles Hall. Everybody should listen, hear him out, because it's very interesting. And there's a whole Star Wars amount of lore here over 70 years that if it's all fake, it means the government secretly created their own Star Wars universe of science fiction just for the purpose of tricking you about drones, which I don't believe. I don't believe all the nuts and bolts of there are these and this and that. There's something going on, and I don't believe there's nothing with other planets. I think there's probably more yes and than there is either or.
I agree. I agree with that. And it's interesting. He's talked about how he dreams from the moment he goes to sleep to the moment he gets up.
DMT's not like that.
I'm very close to that. That's weird that he said that, because I experienced the same thing. As soon as I fall asleep, before I have a Jungian psychologist I talk to once a week, and what I'll do is I'll take a nap right before I see him. Say we have a 3:30 appointment. I'll go to sleep at 3 o'clock, and I'll dream for 20 minutes, and I'll wake up and I'll talk to him about what I just dreamt about. And I can almost do that at will. I remember I have this other friend who I read all the Jungian books with, and she's also an astrologer, which is way more interesting than people think it is. And she'll say, we'll be talking and we're reading something, and we'll be going through something I'm going through psychologically, and she says, what you need to do is go have a dream about this. And so I'll go, okay, and I'll go lay down, take a dream, I'll wake up and I'll call her. This is what I just dreamt. And then it'll remind her of something she read in a Carl Jung book and I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I dreamt about, that thing he talks about, and blah, blah. And it's so when he said that he dreams like that, I'm like, I dream like that too. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, look, that's not the same thing as DMT. He hasn't done it, so he doesn't know.
I've never done DMT. I've never done.
There's nothing like DMT that maybe ayahuasca is, but I understand that's very different. And acid's not like it. And I know the government studied these things on purpose, I don't think these things are what the government wanted them to be. Because a lot of them have the unfortunate side effect of making you feel like you're all part of the same thing. DMT, I didn't find made me feel like that. Acid does, of course. Mushrooms. So they're not really good when you want to atomize people into fighting factions.
Right.
Alcohol is good for that. Every other drug has to be illegal because it causes race mixing. Weed, cocaine is the most diversity, equity, inclusion drug that I've ever experienced in my life, where you're like, wow, every person from society is hanging out at this party, telling each other too much of their personal business. But alcohol is great. And then they finally figured out you can still have a war, I guess, with weed. You can still have soldiers that like weed. So that's why I think it's okay now.
Yeah, I bet you that is.
People got high and played Call of Duty enough to convince the powers that be that we can use this somehow.
Come see us do a live stand-up show. We'll be in Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, and we're going to Europe. Do you live in Europe? We're going to be there. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.